The Grand Council chamber fell silent as Ambassador Chen Wei unwrapped his sandwich. The 67 representatives from across the galaxy watched with a mixture of horror and fascination as the human proceeded to eat what appeared to be processed meat between two slices of bread, while the most important mathematical puzzle in known history rotated holographically above their heads. Ambassador Chen, High Counselor Zix Thara's crystalline voice cut through the silence, her translucent form shimmering with indignation. "We are attempting to solve the labyrinth of infinite recursion. Perhaps you could show some respect for the—" Chen mumbled around a bite of his sandwich, holding up one finger. He swallowed, took a sip from his coffee thermos, and pointed casually at the swirling geometric nightmare suspended in the chamber's center. "You mean that thing?" "Yeah, I solved it about 10 minutes ago. Just waiting for you all to catch up." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices, clicks, whistles, and telepathic static. The Veltar delegation's tentacles writhed in agitation, while the mechanical Axiom Collective's optical arrays flickered in rapid sequence, their equivalent of sputtering. High Counselor Zixathera raised her forearms for silence. "Ambassador Chen, the labyrinth has confounded our greatest minds for 3,000 years. The ethereal mathematicians of Proxima spent 2 centuries in deep meditation attempting to solve it. The hive mind of Kepler 442b dedicated 1,000,000 computational cycles to the problem. Yeah, about that," Chen interrupted, pulling out a napkin to wipe mustard from his fingers. "You've all been overthinking it. Classic mistake, really. Happens to the best of us." He stood up, sandwich still in hand, and walked toward the holographic display. The labyrinth was a sight to behold, a constantly shifting maze of mathematical pathways that folded in on themselves, creating impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. Equations flowed along its walls like living things, while probability, matrices spawned new corridors that immediately began consuming their own origins. "See, the thing is," Chen said, taking another bite, "you're all approaching this like it's some grand cosmic puzzle that requires transcendent intelligence to solve. But it's not." He gestured with his sandwich at a particularly twisted section. "It's a practical joke." The silence that followed was so complete that the ambient hum of the station's life support system seemed deafening. "A joke?" The question came from Ambassador Kethvar, whose species had evolved from philosophers and had never been known to laugh. "Oh yeah," Chen nodded enthusiastically. "The Primarchs who built this thing? They had a sense of humor. Twisted, but definitely humor. The whole labyrinth is basically a very elaborate version of Why Did the Chicken Cross the Road?" He pulled out his datapad, an ancient human device that most of the council considered laughably primitive, and began highlighting sections of the labyrinth. As he worked, the pathways began to pulse with soft blue light. "Look, you've got your setup here," he pointed to the outermost ring, "your misdirection in the middle sections, and your punchline right here in the center. But the joke only works if you're not trying to solve it like a traditional mathematical proof." Counselor Murthak, whose species possessed 17 different types of cognitive processing, leaned forward. "Explain." "Okay, so you're all trying to navigate the labyrinth by following its internal logic, right? Mapping the recursive patterns, calculating the probability cascades, analyzing the geometric transformations." Chen took another sip of coffee. "But that's exactly what you're not supposed to do. The Primarchs designed it to trap analytical minds." He tapped his datapad, and suddenly the entire labyrinth began to collapse in on itself, its impossible geometries straightening into simple lines. "The solution isn't to navigate the maze. It's to recognize that the maze is nonsense and walk around it." The holographic display now showed a simple path, a straight line from the entrance to the center, completely bypassing all the elaborate mathematical constructs that had stumped galactic civilization for millennia. "But that's—" High Counselor Zixthara's form flickered. "That's cheating." "No," Chen said, finishing his sandwich and crumpling up the wrapper. "That's human." Ambassador Kethvar's philosophical mind struggled with the concept. "You ignored the established parameters of the problem." The established parameters were the problem, Chen replied. You were also impressed by how complex and sophisticated the labyrinth was that you never stopped to ask whether complexity was actually necessary. Sometimes the simplest answer isn't just the best one, it's the only one. The Veltar delegation's chief mathematician, her tentacles still twitching with disbelief, projected her thoughts to the chamber. But our greatest thinkers spent lifetimes on this puzzle. Are you suggesting they were all wrong? Chen packed away his thermos and straightened his tie. Not wrong, just human. Or, well, not human. That's the point. He gestured around the chamber. Every species here evolved to respect complexity. You see an elaborate problem and you assume it requires an elaborate solution. But humans? We're the species that looked at the concept of cooking and said, what if we just put food near fire? We're the ones who solved the problem of traveling to other planets by strapping ourselves to controlled explosions. He walked back to his seat, the collapsed labyrinth still rotating slowly above them, now nothing more than a simple geometric pattern. The Primarchs knew that eventually someone would come along who was too stubborn or too stupid to be impressed by mathematical elegance. They built the labyrinth as a test, but not the kind of test you thought it was. It wasn't testing intelligence or computational power. It was testing perspective. High Counselor Zixthara's form had returned to its normal luminescence, though she still seemed shaken. And the human perspective is simplification. The human perspective, Chen said, settling back into his chair, is that if something seems impossible, there's probably something wrong with your assumptions. We're very good at being wrong about things, which makes us excellent at recognizing when other people are wrong about things too. He pulled out another sandwich from his lunch bag. Besides, any puzzle that takes 3,000 years to solve probably isn't actually solvable by the methods you're using. At some point, you have to admit that maybe you're trying to unlock a door by performing interpretive dance when you should just be turning the handle. As the council session concluded and the representatives began filing out, many of them still muttering about the philosophical implications of Chen's solution, the human ambassador remained in his seat, quietly eating his second sandwich and reviewing the agenda for the next meeting. After all, someone had to keep things simple around here.